What is up, everybody? I'm Mitch.
And I'm Dustin, and you are tuned in to the Fatmen podcast. Welcome.
Welcome. So we just want to start this podcast out with our veteran shout out. So I want to give a shout out to Sergeant First Class Zach Seaton. Thank you for your 15, almost 16 years of service, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Sergeant Seaton.
So we have a very special guest on the podcast today. He's a coach. He's a fitness enthusiast. He's a Les Mills body pump trainer, national trainer, and he's completed three. You said three?
3.5, essentially, yeah.
three and a half Ironmans, and he did all of this while battling MS. And so we'll get into that. He's just a really awesome guy. So the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Stephen Glaus.
Hey,
welcome, Stephen.
Hey, let's go. So thankful to be on your guys' show. So great to see you again, Mitch.
Oh, yeah. It's been so long.
Man, can't even count the years. It's insane. But I feel like, if we go back to it, it's like
16
so
years.
cliche, but it's like it's yesterday. If you can, it only takes a moment to go back, right?
Oh, yeah. So a little backstory. We went to basic training together,
That's right.
and it's been almost 16 years since we've even seen each other, since we've graduated. And it's crazy how life goes, and we got reacquainted. And so, we're really excited to have you on here. If you could you give us a little introduction and tell us a little bit about your life?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big question. I could basically start anywhere and take up the entire podcast. So I'll try
We got
to
all
keep-
night. Go ahead.
That's right. I'll try to keep it brief. But yeah, like Mitch had introduced, I joined the military straight out of high school at the age of 18 and knew that the Army is what I wanted to do. Was basically already enlisted by the time I was like 17 years old through the junior enlistment recruitment program. And so got to basic Fort Jackson, South Carolina. That's where I met you, Mitch. Had an amazing time at Relax in Jackson. And from there, I ended up going to my advanced initial training, AIT, for those who are familiar with the acronyms. Got to go to the school where I learned how to become a UAV pilot or a drone pilot.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I actually got to fly it. It's now a retired aircraft, but it's called the MQ-5 Bravo is the acronym. It's the Hunter. It was a really cool aircraft that basically was still launched and landed with an actual physical remote. But when it was actually in the air, it was controlled via a control station attached to the back of a Humvee. So got to do that for about 4 years and got to go to Iraq, spent about 6 months over there. And that was actually some of my favorite time in the military, actually getting to be overseas, actually do my job and be a part of the mission to fight and defend our freedoms. So getting back from Iraq, unfortunately, I ended up struggling with both hereditary issues, but also issues exacerbated by military service, particularly with ruck marches. For whatever reason, I was in a military intelligence unit, but they were a huge fan of taking us on these ruck marches all the time. I thought that was good for our souls. So I just have a propensity for back issues. I have degenerative disc disease, and so it just became debilitating. Got to the point where I could barely be moving. And so I actually ended up getting med boarded out of the military. And so from there, my journey kind of went for a really wild ride. Ended up leaving. I was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, most of my time in the military, but ended up moving with my wife, who my wife and I at the time, we had our daughter. We ended up moving back to Pennsylvania for where I'm from. And from there, I found a job with the Postal Service. So I was working full-time for the Postal Service while also utilizing the GI Bill. Would highly recommend any veterans listening to this, if you have the ability to use the GI Bill, please use it. Use your benefits, because absolutely, it was a game changer in just the trajectory that I took on my life, and I wouldn't be able to be where I am today without that. So please take advantage of that. I used the GI Bill. It took a really really difficult route of going to school full-time while working full-time. And so for me, that looked like working sometimes 80, 90 hours a week while also doing school, 15 credits per semester and nonstop through this accelerated business program. And so I was just basically working myself into the ground, but I was so determined with the purpose that I didn't know what was on the other side of it. I didn't know exactly. Sometimes I would question, why am I putting myself through all of this? I don't have time for my family. I don't have time for life in general. But I knew that I didn't want to be stuck where I was. So I ended up actually completing my bachelor's degree, got this really cool job at this gun store, a firearms store, where I climbed the ranks pretty quick, became the assistant store manager. But yet again, I found myself kind of like at this plateau. I found myself like, what am I doing? I feel kind of stuck. Like I don't see much room for growth. I I love the culture. I love the people. I love the environment. That's one of the big things I miss about the military. I loved the culture. I love the people. Maybe
That
not so much
camaraderie.
that camaraderie. It's so hard to find and replace that.
Oh yeah.
And
It's
so
not
that
something you
actually
find anywhere else, really.
it isn't. And so that's actually why it's a great transition. While I was at that job at this gun store, I had a friend of mine who was prior military. I worked with him in my unit. He reached out to me. He said, "Hey, Northrop Grumman, huge big government contractor. They said, hey, they're looking for pilots to go to Afghanistan, do the same job you were just doing, just a lot more money, right?"
Yeah.
So, my wife and I had a big heart to heart. It lasted. We didn't sleep that night and made the decision, let's go. And so life on the civilian contractor side, things move a lot faster.
Oh, yeah.
In the matter of just, I'd say, less than 7 days, I went from accepting the job offer to flying to Arizona, doing about 3 or 4 days of retraining to learn how to fly the aircraft again, because it had been about maybe 3 years, to getting on a plane to go to Afghanistan. In less than 24 hours, I went from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Afghanistan. I was there. It's
That's crazy.
happened that
That's awesome.
fast. So that really opened the gateway. All this time, I was learning more about myself, and especially in Afghanistan. I mean, I was there for 15 months. It was a long, extended deployment, and during that time, I was actually continuing my progression towards getting my master's degree. I was actually able to do school online while I was in Afghanistan, which is a very unique experience, especially doing these virtual meetings where my internet connection is crappy and I'm trying to, be someone engaged, but also worried about, when's the next order going to come in,
Yeah.
So it's a very unique classroom environment, but
Priorities.
that's right. So thankfully I was able to, thankfully get out of there safely and made it back home. And that's when, it was decision time again for my family and I, for my wife and I, where if Northrop Grumman had basically offered me another, basically they kind of made a deal where a stateside job was going to be promised if I was willing to deploy maybe 1 or 2 more times. But that could have been another 1, 2, 3 years. And so initially I said yes. But after about 3 nights, my wife and I both woke up and looked at each other and said, nope. It was just weird. We both at the same time just looked at each other and said, no, we're not doing it. And so we adjusted course, went back home to Pennsylvania, kind of like our launch pad. That's kind of where we kind of just collect ourselves and figure out what are we going to do next. And so I got involved in all these different programs to be able to accelerate my business ambitions. I didn't really know, still at this point in time. I just finished my master's degree in business. I had no idea what I was going to do. And so thankfully, sort of it's one of those God moments for me. Right when I was about to give up, not sure what to do, I had this company based out of California, reached out to me on LinkedIn. And they basically said, hey, do you have a master's degree in business? Do you have at least 4 years in drone experience? Do you have this, this, and this? And I was like, wow, they're unicorn job. Yes, I have all of those. So
You're I'm the guy.
That's right.
You found me.
You found me. So within a week, it happened again. Boom. Interview, job offer, and in just less than 5 days, hey, honey, we're packing all our stuff. We're driving to California. Let's go.
You ever thought about playing the lottery?
Yeah,
Seems to me like
that's right.
it would be beneficial for you.
So I ended up with this incredible job with a company called Swift Engineering, where I got to be basically, my official role title sounded really boring. I was a technical sales associate, but I was basically an engineering drone pilot / salesperson. And so I got to fly these new and upcoming brand new vertical takeoff and horizontal flight landing technology drones, and got to basically do flight demos and also be the salesperson for those systems. And so about 6 months into this new job, mind you, my wife is pregnant with our second child. And so I get this project to go, hey, you're going to go give a flight demonstration to the Japanese government. They want to see how this drone works. And, all right, booyah, let's go. So we get to Kobe, Japan. It's a really hot day there in July. And I say really hot, it's crazy, 107 degrees, just insane. And so we're just outside in the sun. There's no shade, there's no nothing. And all of a sudden, my left foot just goes completely numb. I'm like, all right, what's going on? And so I didn't think much of it. So the next day we come back, we did preparations the previous day. The next day, my foot's still numb. I can I could stab with the fork, feel nothing. I thought it was, I was kind of showing people, I thought it was just fun and games. And so it wasn't until after we came home that within just a 3-week time span, my condition plummeted, just fell off a cliff. I went from that numbness in my foot to numbness in both legs, to my vision started going all blurry, to started going in and out, to get to the point where I was slurring my speech. I had like stroke-like symptoms where like I had super tight, like sharp pains in my chest. I felt like there was constriction in my chest that made it hard to breathe, swelling, closing of my throat. I had bladder and bowel incontinence. So there were multiple times where I would just wake up and I wake up soaked. I thought it was sweat, but come to find out, you can distinguish the smell pretty quick. And I was soaking myself in urine every single night. And so it didn't take long. Doctors got an MRI and they said my brain was, and I quote, lit up like a Christmas tree. And so I was diagnosed really fast. I consider myself fortunate because when it comes to multiple sclerosis, which is the disease that I'm diagnosed with, a lot of people fight and struggle through this long, arduous pathway to finally get a diagnosis because symptoms MS is typically referred to as the snowflake disease, and that every person's experience with it is going to look different.
Yeah.
There's different types of MS. There's relapse and remitting MS, where you have periods where the progression of the disease spikes really fast, and then it kind of diminishes, and then it kind of follows this like up and down trajectory where it continues to like take this stairway path where it slowly gets worse and worse. Some people have a more progressive form of the disease where it can start like that, but eventually goes into what we call secondary progressive MS, where it just gets to the point where there's no more relapses, but it just gets steadily worse.
Yeah.
And then there's the worst form of MS, which is called primary progressive. And that's where basically the disease just takes an upward chart where there aren't relapses, but it just continually, steadily gets worse and worse and worse. And there is, unfortunately, there's no cure for that. There's no cure for MS. And so when I was initially diagnosed with MS, I had doctors that kind of thought that was where I was landing because of how fast my disease was progressing. And so I had some doctors, try to talk to me, get me mentally prepared. They said, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to be stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. There's a high likelihood that you may lose your vision, that you might not be able to see. And so I remember that day sitting before my neurologist there, he was like afraid to look at me. And he's just like, all right, you have multiple sclerosis. I looked him square in the eyes, Mitch, square in the eyes. And I don't know why, but I said, bring it on. And it was weird in that moment for me. It felt like I had just been given a gift. And I know that's crazy for people to hear, but like, this was like finally my opportunity to finally see, what was I made of? Because I'll be honest, we're going to get a little deep into these conversations here, especially as it relates to like military service. I was a drone pilot, I was a FOBIT. I never went outside the wire, and always had this sense of like, not sure if it's guilt or a sense of
like you didn't do enough.
Like I didn't do enough. Like I never really proved myself.
We're chem guys, so we understand.
I'm
okay?
right there with you. Trust me.
We're chemical guys, so we understand fully.
Yeah. So when I was given this diagnosis, it was like this gift. It was like, all right, Stephen, you want this chance to find out who you are, how strong you are? Here it is. And so it started out a really, really rough ride. I underwent a couple of chemotherapy treatments, which made me feel horrible, made me feel sick, made me feel worse initially. But I forced myself, even though it felt impossible, to start going to the gym. And so sometimes that meant utilizing a walker and barely being able to go from one exercise station to the next exercise machine. And the class that I'm now certified as a trainer in, Les Mills Body Pump, my wife had actually introduced me to it a couple years prior to getting diagnosed with MS. And I loved it. I just loved the challenge with it. And so I remember trying to take my first body pump class with MS, and they had to set up a chair behind me and bags of ice to get ready, because when I would stimulate my body and get, raise my body temperature, that's when the onset of symptoms would occur. And I would start to get that blurry vision. My legs would start to tremble and I would often fall down. But I had that chair. And so I knew I could fall. I could fall down. And I would fall down over and over and over again. And another class that I took is called Les Mills Sprint. It's high intensity interval training on a stationary bike. I'm also an instructor for that program. And that's actually my favorite program. Reason being is, on a stationary bike, you don't have to worry about balance. Yeah. You don't have to worry about where you're going. You don't have to worry about what you can see. And so I would often have like tears streaming down my eyes taking that class, because I would lose my vision and I could barely feel my legs, but I was still moving, and I knew I was still doing something. And time and time again, I felt like a burden to people because after the class is done, I would basically need carried out of the gym because I couldn't move anymore. But this is where I started to learn and grasp the power of neuroplasticity. And it's the incredible, what I call the superpower of the brain. And it's
Yeah.
the brain's amazing ability. We know that the brain is essentially like plastic, that it can adapt and it can change. The old adage that, old dogs can't learn new tricks is completely debunked, especially when it comes to the way that our brains develop and adapt. That with enough time and consistency, dedication, discipline, with enough effort, especially over a consistent pattern of time, we can start to make small changes. And those small steps, just a day at a time, one day at a time, leads to big changes. And so about, I would say, a year and a half or so into this MS journey, I started getting this crazy idea. I was like, maybe I should try and do like a triathlon. And so the ceiling I set for myself was like, all right, half Ironman. Like, I don't really know how to swim yet. I'm going to figure that out. And I can barely run. I'm going to try to figure that out. But I set this ambition for me. And it was right around this time. This was another like God moment for me. But I had an appointment with my chiropractor at the Lebanon VA. And I walk in, and that's particularly whatever it was that day. I was having a really bad, I call them MS days. My wife and I laugh about it. But I was walking with a cane. I had dropped foot. My right foot just wasn't working. So I'm dragging my foot along. I'm more so just frustrated with my current state of being, because inside I know I'm strong. Like, I know my mind and my body can be strong. It's just I can't control it.
Right.
And so I sit down before my chiropractor. His name's Kevin Long, and I sit down before him. He just looks at me. He kind of just stares at me, perplexed. He's like, "I want to help you," is what he says. I was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm here for." It's like, I'm here for a back adjustment because my back always hurts. He's like, no. He's like, I'll take care of that, but I want to really help you. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, I'm going to ask you a question. And he's like, I don't want you to freak out. And I was like, all right, shoot, nothing's going to shock me too much. And he looked at me. He's like, have you ever heard of an Ironman? And it was just like, boom, goosebumps. I was like, what's happening right now? And so I started telling him about this vision I have of myself completing a half Ironman. He got all excited for me. And the moment I said half Ironman, he kind of just stopped. He looked at me and he said, why just half?
Yep.
He said, why are you selling yourself short? He's like, you needed to do a full Ironman. And at that point in time, I didn't believe I could do it. But Kevin, got to give him props. I went home that day, and still not knowing how to swim, still not really being able to run, I signed up for a full Ironman. I signed up.
Awesome.
I paid the money that day. I signed up.
Yeah.
I said, come hell or high water, I'm going to find a way to do this. And so I started doing the training. I started just following a really rigorous, strict diet. That's another huge component of my MS recovery story, is I completely shifted my diet in a radical way. I went from eating your standard prototypical American diet with tons of sugar, tons of processed foods, tons of, I worked out a lot. I did a lot of exercise, and I've always, perhaps it might not resonate with too many of the people who listen to this, but I thankfully have not had to deal with, having to struggle with my weight. That's always just been something that's been on the wayside for me. I could basically just eat whenever I wanted to, because I was always so active. And
I envy you.
yeah. I always tick people off when I say, like, I'm having such trouble. Like right now, I'm trying to put on weight. I'm having such trouble trying to put on just 5 pounds. Like, I just want to gain 5 pounds so bad. It's so hard for me. But
Well, I'll give you some of mine. If you,
that's
if you
right.
want.
Yeah. You know how rich I could be if I could just do that, just like take people's
I know.
Yeah.
weight.
If you figure out a way, please let me know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I changed my diet dramatically in that I went completely gluten-free. I went completely dairy-free. I went completely sugar-free. And for up until recently, I actually went completely vegan. I was vegan for about almost 3 years.
Wow.
And I dug into every resource available. Like when I was diagnosed with MS, I basically shut off my life, and I was like, there's got to be a way to beat this. There's got to be a way to beat this. And so I dug into every resource, book, article, magazine, you name it, podcast, whatever there was, and came down to this basically conclusion. There is no cure for MS. But there's one thing I always have control of. It's right here, my mindset. And so I tell people all the time. I may very well end up in a wheelchair. I may very well end up blind, wetting myself every night. And if that happens, so be it. the one thing that I will always have control of is my mind and my attitude. And those things will carry me forward. So that regardless of where I'm at, I can always find the good in it and always find a way to take the next step, the next positive step forward. And so I ended up finding this incredible guy at my gym who was taking these body pump classes with me. And I was telling him about this new whole Ironman ambition. And he kind of just like smiling at me. He was like the most, he's kind of not necessarily like overly frail, but just like you would never think much of him, like as far as like his physical stature, like just a normal old guy going to the gym taking classes. And so I was like, yeah, but the problem, Matt, his name's Matt Gable. I was like, I don't really know how to swim. Like I can tread water, but I can't, swim 2.2 miles. Like I can barely swim 100 yards. Like
swimming is no joke.
It's no joke.
That's
right?
exercise in itself.
At my old gym, we had a pool when I lived over in Illinois, and I was like, you know what? I want to go swimming. I was dead. Like afterwards, it tuckered me out.
Like only swimming like just one length of the pool, I'd be like gasping for air because I already have issues breathing through my nose. So like I'm just a complete mouth breather in the pool, which is so unnatural anyways, and so difficult. But Matt just kind of looked at me and smiled. He's like, "Well, I can teach you how to swim." And I was like, "Oh, you can?" He's like, "Yeah, there's an indoor pool here." He's like, "Why not after body pump? We just go to the pool and I'll show you some tips." Well, come to find out, after working with him for maybe about like 2 or 3 sessions, he finally reveals and lets me know that he's a former U.S. Navy SEAL.
Oh, that's awesome.
If there's a guy that knows how to swim,
Yeah.
it's this
Creme de la creme.
It's this guy. And so I definitely give massive credit to Matt being a part of this journey to help me learn how to swim. And it was so frustrating. It goes back to this concept of neuroplasticity. Like after a couple of sessions with him, like I was basically, all right, I got it down. I just got to keep practicing. But I got to this point where I hit a plateau. Like I could do maybe 4 laps and I would just be completely winded, completely just exhausted, out of breath. Like, and I remember just one day, just like basically punching the side of the pool. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? I'm like, I'm stuck here. And I made the decision to come back one more day, to try it one more time. Weirdest thing happened. 5 laps, 6 laps, 10 laps, 20 laps. Before I knew it, I was swimming for over an hour straight. And just like that, it clicked. It was like, just breathe, just relax, just breathe. And it just became almost like a meditative experience, which is why I like swimming is one of my favorite exercises now. It's just, I can relax and get centered and just listen and feel my body moving and feel my breathing and let my thoughts just be focused on my movements. And it's such a meditative, releasing experience for me. So I would highly recommend, if anybody's looking for a way to integrate like meditation with movement, find a way to get to a pool. And swimming's hard at first, and once you figure it out, I promise you, it's such a freeing experience.
One thing I'll say about being in a pool, like really, it separates you from the rest of the world. Like that water barrier, it definitely makes you feel like it doesn't matter how many people else are around. It makes you feel like it's just me. It's just me here.
Yeah.
You can be yourself, be in your own mind, and just let go of everything else.
I don't look like it due to my stature, but I actually love to swim. I always tell my wife that I should have been born a fish because I like to spend so much time in the water.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely amazing. Especially my dad ended up getting me a birthday gift the one year of these they're called like the brand's underwater audio, especially like headphones that you can wear underwater.
Oh, that's so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I actually play music, so I can play music, listen
cool.
to podcasts. And so especially when you're training for like Ironman swims that take like hour and a half, like swimming back and forth for an hour and a half, it's really boring.
Yeah,
So,
you could totally listen to the Fatmen podcast.
that's right. Yeah,
you go.
absolutely. You can absolutely do it. So yeah. Massive plug-in right there. So absolutely. Yeah. So I got to the point getting ready. This is circling into the start of 2020, right? And so my Ironman's scheduled for August 2020, and it's March 2020. And you guys, we all know what happened. COVID shuts down the world, and COVID also shuts down my Ironman opportunity.
Oh.
And so they canceled all Ironman races. But the cool thing is that Ironman kind of, they were innovative, and they started creating these like virtual competitions. And so it started out with like these small like challenges to complete to stay consistent with the training regimen. And it kept building, getting a little bit more and more. And so I decided just to stay consistent, just keep doing these challenges. And then right around the time of when my Ironman was supposed to be, Ironman opened up this full virtual Ironman challenge. And it's the only time they ever did this. And there were only actually about 112 participants across the globe that decided to do this because it's crazy. Do an Ironman by yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Do it all by yourself. You just got to make sure you have all the gear to track your mileage and your equipment, and that
That actually sounds kind
you
of fun,
did
really.
everything.
That is
And
really cool.
So I set everything up. I actually hired this open water swim coach because I'd never swam in open water before. That was terrifying gap to cover.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we got into the water a couple of times, and she helped me learn how to sight, be able to see, help me to control my breathing. Mind you, the water temperature in like late October, Pennsylvania, freezing cold water.
Oh, man.
So learning how to handle like cold water swimming and doing that. And so we got a couple of practice sessions in. So that morning I had her for safety, guiding me with her kayak, just sort of as a guide to make sure, A, that I didn't drown, but B, that also there's boats that go up and down the channel that I was swimming. So she was there to just guide me and protect me in many ways. So I had the swim ready, and then I had my bike ready. I actually had my dad. He kind of served as my my race butler. He was basically he would drive his car like
stagehand.
That's right. He was my pack mule. So he would drive his car like 15 miles ahead with like Gatorades and snacks and everything, and just wait for me. And mind you, this was it. This was legit my first attempt at an Ironman. The funny thing is I had never done any other triathlon in my life. No like sprint triathlon, no like Olympic distance, no half Ironman, just going full plunge head first into this full Ironman.
Now,
And
for the people that don't know how far an Ironman is, can you tell us?
Yeah, so it's a 2.2 or 2.4 mile swim. Yeah, 2.4 mile swim is the start. And then it goes into a 112 mile bike ride.
Oh, man.
And so if that's not fun enough, once you get done with the bike, it's a full 26.2 mile marathon run, back to back to back. And so there's a time cutoff too. You have to complete everything from start to finish, including transitions, within 17 hours. And that's your window.
That's insane.
And so I was able to, thankfully, because my body does really bad with the cold weather now. Thankfully, that was a unseasonably warm day in Pennsylvania. Got like high of 65. And so the weather was on my side that day, thank God. And I actually was able to get through the swim relatively well. I had to actually kind of hide and kind of recharge in my car that had the heat turn on full blast because I was shivering uncontrollably because the water had been so cold. I was in the water for about an hour and 40 minutes in like 60-degree water, which is really difficult. So my transition time took a long time getting from the swim to the bike. But when I finally got my bearings back, got on the bike, and the bike was relatively issue-free, thankfully. It wasn't until I got to the run that my body was really tested, not only mentally, but especially physically. About, I would say, like mile 16 of the run, I started getting like these, what felt like electrical shocks, like pain just shooting from like my hips down into my feet. It felt like my legs were like catching on fire and exploding. Like it was just, I had to stop so many times. And I have to admit that I ended up walking like the last 2.5 miles. But for me, I didn't care. For me, it was all just about the finish. Like all I cared about was getting to the end. And so it took me 16 hours and 35 minutes, but I ended up crossing my virtual finish line. And the crazy thing is that there were maybe 4 people there to witness it. 4 people. When typically with the real Ironman, you have thousands of people like that.
Right.
It's what makes an Ironman so special. It's like just that environment. It's crazy. It's so hard to replicate. But I just remember falling to basically my knees and thanking God, and it was, oh man, it's
Surreal moment.
It was a very surreal moment. Like to go, like when I tell my story now, it's hard even for me to like go back and actually think about what it was like when I couldn't walk, when I was in a wheelchair. Like it's wild to think that I came from there to where I am today. And so
to do all, so we had a guest last week. Her name was Kaylin Warland, and she said something that I think is really applicable. She said that because she just completed in her first marathon not that long ago, and she said that she was disappointed about her time and she didn't get it as fast as she wanted. And her dad is a marathon runner. He said, "Do you know what the average woman runs a marathon in?" And she was like, "What?" he said, "Average women don't run marathons."
That's
So
right,
like,
yeah.
but I think that that's a really powerful quote because
Very true.
average people don't do what you did. I mean, you've like what you've done. That's pretty badass.
Especially
there's-
battling MS the entire
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Like, I commend
Yeah.
you. Like,
that's
I
really
couldn't even
awesome.
do that myself.
Yeah.
So
And
we're gearing up to run our first 5K
Let's
this
go.
year.
Hey.
You know,
yeah, and for me it's not so much like, I think the reason, and we hinted on this a little bit, but the reason the Ironman is so attractive to me, it's not just the challenge of it itself, not just like the grandiose like achievement of it, but it almost puts me back into that military mindset. Like the day that I deployed to Iraq, like I've never, outside of an Ironman, I can't replicate that feeling. But the moment you get on the starting line before that cannon goes off, it's like you're there. You get to go there again, and it's like just for that day, you get to get that sense of like you're on a mission.
Yeah.
The sense of like you get to sacrifice something. And the one thing that I love about the Ironman is every time you show up, and this goes for any challenge that we decide to tackle when it comes to the actual race day or whatever that performance event's going to be. Every time you show up, you get to learn something about yourself. Whether it's a success, a triumph, or even if it's a failure, either way, you're going to learn something about yourself. And I'll tell you what, I've completed 3 full distance Ironmans now. I did one subsequently. The one I was supposed to do in Maryland, I did the following year because I went back to my chiropractor and he's so thrilled and proud of me. But he's like, you know, if you really want to make sure that it really counts, he's like, you should probably actually do like a real one. And I was like, all right, Kevin. So I ended up doing a real sanctioned event, and that kind of got me addicted. And on this course where I'm trying to get to the world championship stage. So the really cool thing about the Ironman group is I get to compete in what they call the physically challenged category, the division, because I have this disability, this disease. And every year, Ironman invites 5 random participants to the world championship race out of this division. And so it's basically like a lottery drawing. And so as long as I complete one half or full distance Ironman every year, my name gets pulled. And so
that's so cool.
I'm staying on this cycle where I'm trying to do just at least one of those every year until my name gets drawn. I get to go to Kona, Hawaii to do the world championship race. So,
well, when you get there,
that's right.
When you
that's
get
right.
there, you have 2 people that's 2 more people that's rooting for you.
I can't wait. Yeah,
and like we'll definitely when you do compete in it, we'll make sure that we give you a shout out during.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So how many do you do other races, other marathons, or anything like that throughout the year? Or just
unfortunately, just
I say just, but I mean
I mean an Ironman is such, and this is what it's. I guess some people perhaps it's like. Understanding Ironman is like impossibly hard. It's so difficult, even for like a person with normal health, so hard. But like for me and my MS, the recovery cycle is a bear. It's not fun. Like when I finish an Ironman, a full distance one especially, like I'm out of commission for 2 weeks at least.
I seen that video you posted
that was
after
just,
you did that half.
That was just a half
Ironman.
Yeah,
and you were like, look at my legs.
That was just a half. Yeah, when I do a full Ironman, like. I feel like I don't know. It's I have to be careful just with my not only work-life balance, but also my like commitments and obligations to my wife, because when I do an Ironman, it's like my wife is taking charge of everything. I can't serve. I can't help anymore. Like she has to do everything for like 2 weeks. And so I'm so thankful for her. I have to give my wife like a huge, incredible shout out for being my biggest supporter in this entire journey. Wouldn't be anywhere without you, Nikki. So if you decide to listen to this, she usually doesn't listen to this. If she's listening, yeah.
Of all the podcasts, this should be the one she listens to.
Yeah, I'll try to coax her, get her to listen to it. So, but yeah, I mean, I owe her the world, and especially because these Ironman triathlons, they take up so much time, so much bandwidth. They're such a commitment. You can't just hop into a race day and say, here I am, I'm gonna try an Ironman. Like there's so much preparation that goes into it, so much money. They're not cheap. It's a very expensive hobby. So I can't wait actually to get invited to Kona so I can finally retire. And be done with this journey. But at the same time, like I'm trying to enjoy the journey along the way. And going back to like the concept of failure, about a year and a half ago, I actually was signed up and ready to do Ironman Florida. It's a full distance Ironman in Panama City. And I had been dealing with an illness, like a really long chronic illness. And that's another side effect of my immune system, especially being blasted with chemotherapy early on. But I have a very compromised immune system. So like right now I'm sick, and typically I get sick much quicker than most people get sick. I'm susceptible to illness. And then when I get sick, I stay sick for so much longer. And I was dealing with this chronic illness for about 3-4 weeks, and it just wouldn't go away. And I'd already invested so much time, money, and effort into prepping for this race that I showed up on race day sick. And I was like, I'm going to try this and see what happens. And I was like coughing up phlegm and mucus during the swim, and I was getting all feverish and dizzy during the bike ride. And so when I finally tried to make the transition from the bike to the run, my fever spiked to like 103 degrees. And I tried to get up and start walking, but all my MS symptoms started coming back. I started not being able to walk, and I started like basically trembling, and I got super emotional. I was crying like a baby because like what was really hard in that moment is because I looked so strong. I look like such a physically like capable person. I had people kind of like almost discounting my resilience, almost like kind of insinuating that like I was weak, that I was
just giving up.
I was just giving up. Like they almost couldn't believe that I was giving up. And that's one thing I always would caution anyone is don't cast judgments, because you never know what someone's going through.
Right.
Until you walk a day in somebody else's shoes, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision that was best for me, best for my family, because I know if I tried to keep going, I'd be in an ambulance. I wasn't going to make it through. And so what that race taught me, though, is probably more so than any race that I finished, about the learning to be accepting of ourselves, of just who we are, without the achievements, without the grandeur, without the performance. Like I don't need to do an Ironman to have value. I don't need to do any of those things. Like that's not going to make me any more valuable or any more special. Like
I think that's a hard thing just in the fitness community, because so many people like, that go to the gym or that compete in these kind of things, a lot of times body dysmorphia comes in with it too, and
yes, it does.
it's just we're the hardest critics of ourselves.
Absolutely,
so that's an important thing.
It's hard to do that kind of stuff. Excuse me. It's hard to do that kind of stuff and not need that validation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To seek that out, it's hard to just to do it for yourself and know that all the effort you're putting in is good enough.
Right. And that's why, especially now for me, like this Ironman journey, I'm not so much focused anymore on like getting to Kona would be awesome, would be great. But like, I'm not sure if you guys saw my most recent half Ironman that I did. I got to was sponsored and racing for a new charity that I work with, MS for MS, Mission Stadiums for Multiple Sclerosis.
We donated to it. So.
Oh yes, absolutely, yeah. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
we thought it was really awesome.
Yeah, and so getting to partner with them has been just an absolutely incredible experience. Where it's really easy to push your body to really difficult places of discomfort when you know you're doing it for a good cause. When you know you're doing it to help other people, because it's one of the hardest things about MS is that because everybody's journey is so different, even if somebody were to follow exactly the protocol, every single step that I've taken in my MS journey, yeah, they're putting themselves into probably one of the best case scenarios for success, but you still can't control the outcome.
Yeah.
And that goes for any of us in life, really. Like I talk to people and tell them, I've got MS, but they call this disease like a ticking time bomb. You never know when the next relapse is going to come and when your life's going to get upended. But that's all of us.
Yeah.
You don't know that tomorrow you're going to get a car accident or what's going to happen. And so we're all just one day away from our lives being completely upended, the rug being pulled from under our feet. And so really just boils down, control the controllables. Control what you can. Work on your mindset, be focused on positivity and putting in the reps every day, especially mentally, because some days, you especially when you push your body physically, especially when you're starting like a new workout routine, you're going to need rest days. And those can be like the most mentally taxing days, because with that's going to come a sense of guilt, a sense of shame, a sense of laziness, a sense of basically I'm breaking my streak. Like this proves that I'm not strong enough, or I can't do this. But your body needs rest.
We have a saying that we always say is 90% of the battle is showing up, and that's a big thing for us, because we know better than anybody of the guilt and the laziness and all that. Whenever you take the breaks, it's a hard habit to one, take the breaks whenever you need to, because we get on that high where we're like, oh, we can do this, we can hit it harder, but take the breaks when we need to. But then, like, when I travel a lot with work, and our schedule gets messed up because we work out together 4 days a week. But when we take that time off, coming back, it's really easy. It's really easy to be like, you know what? We don't have to do that.
Well, it's also pretty easy to push yourself to the point of exhaustion or injury, to where making the excuses to not do it is easier than doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in how do I want it? So with your battle with MS, and then everything else that you're doing, how do you combat those off days, those days that like whenever your body tells you have to take a break? How do you mentally prepare for that? How do you get through those days?
I'm going through it right now. I've been sick for the past 4 days, and I already have a sense and a feeling. I know my body at this point. I'm going to be sick for probably the next 4, 5, 6 days from here. Like I'm stuck in this. Like I'm in a season of sickness. And so I physically, it would not be safe for me to try to work out right now. And that sucks, because I'm sure you guys have experienced this before. I was on such an amazing streak. Like I got these really ambitious goals, like when it comes to like weightlifting and adding some like heavy strength training into my routine now. And all of that's just gonna like boop, just be gone, because it goes away so fast. But there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do about it. Nothing. And so I have to practice what I preach. And so my motto, I'm sure you've heard me say it before, Mitch, but it's embrace the day. I actually, if you guys have it, I'll show it to you. There it is. Embrace the day.
I love that.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's nice.
And so for me, that motto means so much to me. It's embrace.
Are those your medals there on the wall as well?
Oh yeah. So yeah, these are my medals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So this is the one, the virtual one. This is the one that probably means the most to me. The first one, because
that's so
the
cool.
beginning of the journey.
The beginning of the journey, and the fact that there's only like 100 of these in the world that exist.
That's awesome.
I think is really special, and nobody else ran the race that I ran, just like I didn't run the race that anybody else ran. So it's that.
See, that's really cool in itself. And you said you had 4 people there that were witness to it.
That's
I bet
right.
those were the 4 people that you cared to see it the most, right?
Oh yeah, it was really, really special. Really special.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So, but yeah, you have to remind me, what were we talking about?
We were talking about those off days and combating those.
So I was literally repeating that mantra in my mind, especially on Sunday when it got the worst, when the fever was really high. I could barely do anything. It was just embrace the day. And so for me, embrace the day means embrace the good and embrace the bad, especially the bad, because it's the bad things in life that it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when they happen.
Right.
But it's also the bad things in life that give us the greatest opportunity for growth and for us to find out what we're made of. And so,
exactly.
You know, I'm learning more and more, especially, you know, as we progress in this journey in life. You know, we're only getting older, and I'm starting to already, especially because with my body with MS, sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in like a 60-year-old man's body or something. Like it's like, and I can just already tell that like as I get older, I know, you know, physical fitness and just being able to perform physically, that's going to get harder and harder. And there's going to come a point where I'm going to start to be on the losing end of that battle. Like no matter how hard I work, I'm never going to be able to get as strong as I was like 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that's going to happen. And I'm going to have to come to terms with that. But the cool thing is the one thing that can always get stronger is our minds and our spirit.
Yeah.
And so
truth to that.
as long as I can stay vigilant and maintain mental, emotional, and spiritual vigilance, you can take away the bodily functions. Will that suck? Absolutely. But it's a mental state that I try to not expect, but to prepare for, if that makes sense.
Right.
Well, for what it's worth, at least from our perspective, you've accomplished things that even people that haven't battled illnesses haven't even dreamed of. So, like seeing all those medals on your wall, that is so cool. That's
exactly
so
what I was
cool.
gonna say.
And
Yeah.
I know it's been 16 years, but I'm proud of you, man. Like I really
I
am.
appreciate that.
I remember you whenever you were just a young kid in basic training,
Yeah.
and so many years ago. And but yeah, that's really cool. That's really something, man.
I appreciate you, Mitch. You were an incredible. Just I felt a sense of like, I don't know how to put this, a sense of like comfort, not in like a weird way, but a sense of just like you brought me just like a sense of like, I'm gonna be okay. Like, because I was 18 years old, like I wasn't like very emotionally mature, and so I've also struggled with depression and self-image and like suicidal ideation for like most of my life since I was like 13 years old. So I came into basic training like very sick to begin with mentally already. And being in that environment was very, very challenging, very difficult when you're having somebody scream at the top of their lungs that you're a piece of crap.
It was something so new and so foreign for all of us.
Yeah.
Like I don't, looking back, like I remember hearing all the stories from all my family members that were in the military, and I was like, I'm going to expect I'm going to expect Full Metal Jacket. And it can only be better than that, but no, definitely we had a pretty good group of guys. And,
Yeah, we did.
I was actually talking every once in a while, like things will pop up in my head that I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But I don't know if you even remember this. We were in basic training, was so bored. We were like so bored on the little bit of free time that we had. We were out in the field, and what we did was we did like the slow motion fighting. Do you remember this?
No, I do. It's amazing because I was sitting down for this podcast. I was like, man, I hope so badly Mitch brings up a memory I forgot about. I want this so badly. I need this in my life. This is great.
I remember we were so bored, and there was it's been so long since. Do you remember Milner?
Yeah, Milner. Yeah,
so
big
Milner
tall black
was
guy.
there,
Yeah,
and Chaplin. Does I think that was his name?
yeah. Not sure if I remember him.
Anyways, we were all like slow motion fighting, and like we two of them like picked me up and like held me like we were doing like some Asian fight scenes and stuff. That's the stupid stuff that we did to try to keep ourselves entertained.
Do you want to tell them the story about the Pop-Tart?
I don't remember the story of the Pop-Tart. You were tell me about it, but I don't really. I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, I have a lot of, because I'm such a big foodie, I have a lot of food memories with basic training. Like I remember like when we were out in the field and like they would give us like the mermites, like food from there. Like people would be throwing away their lima beans or their stuff they didn't want. I'd be like digging through the trash, like trying to eat their lima beans. I was so hungry all the time.
I would always go around during basic training when we had those. I would always go around to everybody that was there and be like, "Hey, do you have any left over? Did you finish all your food?" And they'd be like, "No." They'd hand it to me.
Yeah,
that was one of those.
I'm not sure if you remember, Mitch, but do you remember there was like a black market on slices of bread?
Yes,
under
yes.
FTX.
So you want to know a secret? So you're actually the only person from basic training that knows this secret now. All the people that got in trouble for having chew in basic training, I chewed the whole entire time in basic training. I had the perfect hiding space, and nobody like. Do you know where my hiding space was? It was. Do you remember where our barracks were? Right in front of our company area where we formed up.
Yeah.
The steps that led up, I would take, and I put my can of chew that I paid like $30 for that single can of chew for.
Yeah.
I stuck it right there, and so every night I would go out there and I'd just sit on those steps and look around, nobody's there, and I'd take it and I'd shove it in my boxers and go in the bathroom and chew while I was taking a shit. That's what I did. I was just smarter than they were, I guess. But
oh man, but because we were always so hungry. I don't remember exactly how it came to be. I just know that we both came up with the idea that we were gonna basically smuggle our Pop-Tarts, like extra ones. So, like we were collecting them from other people's MREs that didn't want them.
I remember this.
Yeah. And we were gonna hide them in because we had access. We were in charge of putting like the banner, the flag, like to putting that away and like getting it out every morning. And so they gave us the guide on. Yeah, they give us access to like the locker that was right outside like where we would form up and like right outside the barracks. So they gave us access to put the guide on away every night and put it out in the mornings. And so we would start hiding Pop-Tarts in the guidon because we would get basically unsupervised just access to leave the barracks. And it was only maybe like 5 minutes, but we'd like look around and just like open up some Pop-Tarts.
And like shamelessly eat it as fast as we could.
Did you guys ever have guidon wars?
No, I don't think we had.
I did an AIT.
Where you had to go steal the other person's guidon without them knowing. So in AIT, that stuff's acceptable. That shit's okay. In basic training, it is not. And we figured that out the hard way because we went to the other company. It wasn't just the other platoons. We went to a different company completely.
Oh wow!
And stole their fucking guidon and took it back to our barracks and hid it in the barracks. And
oh
our
man!
Found out about it, and boy, he was fucking pissed. He was so livid. He was like, "Where the hell did this come from?" Then when he figured out whose it was, he went and made us take it back to him. And needless to say, there was a smoke show for like 3 hours over that one. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
I remember. I don't know if you remember this guy. Do you remember Drill Sergeant Carpenter?
Oh yeah,
he was the one that he was. You'd be like, "You're the man, Drill Sergeant." He's like, "I know I am."
Yeah.
And but like he has it's just been imprinted in my head. I remember we were doing some class and they were like, "Drill Sergeant, you're the man." He was like, "I know." I woke up this morning. I thought, I'm the man. I started shaving, and I realized I am the man. One day, you can be the man too, but not today. I remember he would just say things like, but I remember the last day that when we were leaving, we were getting on the bus. I was like, "Drill Sergeant, you're the man." He's like, "No, Lunsford, you're the man."
That's awesome. No way. That's so cool. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned him. Like day one of reception, he was like one of the first people I interacted with. And for whatever reason, my brain just put it on record. He said he said success in the Army is simple: right time, right place, right uniform, right equipment, right attitude. He said it just like that. And he basically just stopped us for like maybe 10 seconds. He said that and he walked away. But like I've kept that, and that is applied
so many different places,
and maybe not so much like the right equipment, but even so, like equipment doesn't have to be physical all the time. Like sometimes it's just like the mental preparedness, but like it is applied in so many different aspects of my life that if you have those things squared away, right time, right place, right uniform, right equipment, right attitude, you're going to be successful.
Absolutely.
Amen to that.
I remember. So another thing I remember about you is I sucked at push-ups. I sucked at push-ups so bad in basic training. Like it was so bad that I wasn't sure I was going to graduate.
Well, like I told you before, we had a guy in our unit that could not do one and had to sign a waiver to graduate from basic because he couldn't do push-ups. Yeah.
Well, I remember like every single day, it was you would like you're like, "Hey, Lunsford, we're gonna knock out some push-ups," and we would do like pyramids and stuff like that. And we like you helped me a lot. You're the reason why I passed. You and Milner were the reasons I passed basic training because that was the one thing I just couldn't get it.
Yeah.
I was so close.
Was it you and I know Tucker was there. Do you remember Tucker? He was like this big tall guy, kind of like he had like the BCG glasses.
That sounds familiar.
But it was like the day before graduation. Like there were still a couple of people who hadn't passed their PT tests yet.
Yeah, I passed the day.
So I went to. I actually woke up early with everybody to like go help, like be there for support. And actually, I remember help Tucker. Like I was running with him the whole time, screaming at him at the top of my lungs. One of my favorite moments in basic training. Like I got to be the drill sergeant for a moment, and like he gave me just like just an emotional hug afterwards. It was so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I remember so it really sucked because the day before graduation they did the last PT test, and I finally got to the point where I was good on my push-ups, but the night before that PT test I slipped in the shower and I tore my groin muscle, and I was I didn't find out that I tore my groin muscle until I got to AIT, but I was like, I am not staying here for another second. And so whenever I got to AIT, found out I tore my groin muscle, but that was a rough PT test.
Oh, man, I can imagine.
That run sucked, but
Yeah.
I made it through. And
Yeah.
but yeah, a lot of there's so many. I'm sure that there's so many
Yeah.
other
Well,
memories from
yeah.
basic training that we can't even think
Yeah.
about right
One
now.
of my favorite ones with you is just, I don't know why, but you might remember this, maybe not, but for whatever reason, we were like right outside the bathroom or even in the bathroom. We were both sitting next to each other and we were singing, together, give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I want to take. And
we would
just
sit
doing
around and sing all the time.
That's right. We're just having a little karaoke session in front of
Yep.
it. Like, and the funny thing is, like, nobody cared. We're just as loud as we wanted to be, and everybody just like thought it was normal. It was pretty cool.
It's because we were so bored. We embraced the suck together, and we just found what worked. Like I remember, we would get so bored. Somehow we had like it was like, what's it called? Sticky tack. We found some sticky tack and made it into a ball.
Talking about moleskin?
Maybe I don't know. It was like it was like sticky tack. We made it into like a bowl, and we had a bucket, and we sat there for like 45 minutes. All of us had a little competition, like a basketball competition. Do you
I don't remember this, but I can totally believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, we did so many things, like things that you were like, we got creative on how to deal with our boredom.
We did stupid shit, like we used to play nutsies. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that game or not, but it's where you have two players and they sit at opposite ends of the barracks on the floor with their legs spread as wide as they can get them.
How stupid are we?
You'll take, usually the only thing we had access to was water bottles, so we would take our canteen and we would fill it half full of water and you would chuck it across the barracks to the other person to try to hit them in the nuts, and they had to sit with their hands behind their backs.
Oh, my goodness.
First one to get hit in the nuts and double over loses, so you'd take as many shots as you could until you couldn't take any more. So
I have never been so bored that I was willing to risk it and hitting the balls. There's never been a time.
But that carried over to
I remember
as well.
I remember whenever you did that.
Yeah.
There was a guy in our unit, Molden, who wanted to play nutsies with me one day. So we were
Sounds hilarious.
We were in the barracks and he kept cheating. He kept, every time I would get close to hitting him with the water bottle, he would flinch and cover up. And I'm like, dude, you got to quit doing this shit. You're cheating. Keep it up and bad things are going to happen. Stop cheating. So I made him sit on his hands. So then I threw the water bottle and he would close his legs. And I'm like, okay, fine. So we're going to break this down to where you can't cheat. So I said, I want you to lay on your back. Sit on your hands like you're doing, your flutter kicks, and just spread your legs so you can't even see it coming, so you don't have a chance to flinch. And he's like, all right. So he's laying down, and about the time that I get ready to throw this water bottle, a buddy of mine walks in from the PX. I think it was you, was it not?
No, it was Cheeseman.
Cheeseman, okay. Cheeseman walks in from the PX, and he had a bag full of Gatorades. And I had this little water bottle, and I'm like, hey, let me get one of those Gatorade bottles. It was the big one. He's like, all right. So he hands it to me, and I get up, and I'm standing up at this point now. And I holler at Molden, and I'm like, are you ready? And he was like, yeah. I said, okay, on 3, I'm going to throw it. He's like, okay. So I said 1, and I took off running as fast as I could toward him. About halfway to him, I yelled 2, and I just threw it. I was like standing over the top of him, full dead sprint.
Oh, my goodness.
Threw it right at his nuts, hit him, and it just exploded everywhere. And Gatorade goes flying everywhere. The cap goes flying off. The bottle goes flying the other direction. And he sits up, holding his nuts. He was like, oh, screaming and hollering. I said, that's what you get for fucking cheating.
And I remember I walked in, I was like, you guys are idiots. There ain't no way. You didn't know you were going to have these conversations
That's right. Yeah.
on here, did you?
I was,
That's
I was
awesome.
kind of
The people that aren't in the military, they don't. That's something they don't understand. The stupid, we like to call them. We like to call them fuck games.
Yep.
But
people that were not in the military will hear this story and think that's the stupidest fucking story I've ever heard. But people in the military will be like, "Yep, been there."
That makes sense. Yeah.
I've seen dumber things. I'm sure you've seen dumber things in your days, right?
Yep,
No, I've
that
seen
makes
much
sense.
dumber
Yep.
than that. Yes.
But no, good things. So I have a question for you. So like I said,
sure.
a big part of our audience is people that are just getting started and trying to make it past that first step of getting to take that first step for a healthier life and making that progress. What would you say to somebody that is trying to do the right thing, that's trying to get their not just their physical right, but their mental state right to get in there and do the thing?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it boils down to clarity, clarity on what's most important to you, and clarity on the why, clarity on like why are you doing what you're doing, and then setting the foundation by having clarity on your focus, clarity on what you can control, what you can't control. Those two things are really important. Knowing the difference, because once you understand what you do have control over, you don't have to get so stressed out about like. Let's say you get sick. Let's say you lose your job. You get into an accident. Something happens, life event. You don't have to let that derail you. So once you have understanding what you can and cannot control, then it's about starting with habit forming, developing the right habits. And so I always recommend, especially starting out, 2 critical factors. Start small, right? You want to start small. That's important. But associate habit forming with a trigger. And so trigger is like a triggering word nowadays, right? But what I mean by trigger is like, for example, let's say you're going to start a commitment to start reading more, and that's great. I want to read more. Well, first, define what is more, like be very specific about that. So if it's, I'm going to start, exercising more, be very specific about that. And also temper that with realistic expectations. I'm going to exercise more. Remember, we said start small. Maybe more is 10 minutes a day. Maybe we're starting really small. It's not setting low expectations for yourself. It's about gaining momentum, finding small wins along the way, because it might just be 10 minutes a day and that's fine. But guess what? Some days you're going to do more than 10 minutes and that's
We
a
always
win.
say those small wins turn into big wins.
Absolutely. So that's like the snowball effect. But the physical trigger then is what's going to get you to be able to transform that intent into an autonomous action. So let's say, for example, I say, all right, I'm going to read every day. What's the physical trigger that's going to initiate the reading? So it could be brushing my teeth. I know that as soon as I spit, rinse, boom, that's that physical trigger. I'm going to immediately go and read. Or it could be as soon as I make my coffee, boom, I'm going to immediately go and read. I know I make my coffee every morning, so that's my physical trigger. Do something, have your physical trigger be something that you're already doing every day autonomously. Something that you know without fail. It's going to be something you do. That way, when you're building a new habit, it's not something that you have to be super worried and stressed out about what it's going to look like on how it's achieved, nor will you be worried about when it's achieved. You know what the how is, what it looks like, very with specificity, but you also know when. You have that physical trigger to tie it into. So basically boil it down to basics. Be simple, be clear, and have some sort of physical trigger associated with it. That would be my guidance word.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
we have a saying that we call it our number one rule, and I feel like everything that we've heard you talk about today and everything that I've learned about you, you are the encompassment of this number one rule. Like if you could take our number one rule and put a face to it, I feel like Stephen Glaus would be the face of this number one rule. And our number one rule is
don't be a bitch. That's our number one rule.
Yeah. So you are the encompassment of our don't be a bitch.
And if you gather, like we're very informal, we're very kind of gruff in the way that we talk, but we're lighthearted.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah, we're lighthearted about it, and we don't mean it in any bad way, but it's what works for us. And so, like when we're in the gym, like there's times that you know how it is. Like you'll give up on yourself on that last set, and whenever after you get done, you're like, man,
it was the most important one.
And so he'll be there. Don't be a bitch. Come on, get that up.
It sounds rough to hear somebody say "don't be a bitch," and a lot of people might come off and be like, "Well, that kind of that's harsh." But it's not really so much as calling somebody a bitch. It's basically just saying, "Don't give up." Give it your all. Give it 110%. When you feel like you're done, give it just a little bit more.
Because at the end of the day, this is the only body we have. This is we only have one life. We only have. Every decision we make, we only get one time around with this, so we might as well push ourselves to the point that we know we can be proud of what we've done.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't, like you said, even in those failures, in those you can call them failures, but I call them learning
curves.
Yeah, learning curves. Even in those times of failure, you're still growing as a person. And so letting yourself know that don't be a bitch, push yourself through, and you can do anything you put your mind to. Like, it makes a big difference. But yeah, you're the living encompassment of our number one rule.
And I don't necessarily like the word failure either, because I feel like the only time you really fail is when you stop trying. So, I mean, given everything you've told us, there hasn't been a day where you've stopped trying. You've pushed yourself to the limits every waking moment of your life. So, I don't see any failure.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, with that mindset, the one thing I would caution with that mindset is to temper that with grace.
That's what our last guest said as well, is give yourself some grace.
Temper that with grace, because I've been there. I've been in that mindset where I've not allowed myself any room for any excuses, even when they were legitimate, even when there were things that were outside of my control. I was blaming myself for that. And that's not a healthy place to be.
Right.
And so I think it's having clarity on, going back to, yet again, it's so paramount. What can I control and what can I not?
Yeah.
If you can control the things that you're not giving your full effort to, then yeah, you need to man up. You take accountability for that. Be disciplined. Work harder. But if there's things that are outside of your control, and you're trying to take the onus for that, or take the onus for other people's problems, other people's projections and opinions of you, that's not your job. That's not your role.
Yeah.
Right.
Knowing the difference between the two is a big part.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I have nowhere in any way, shape, or form pushed myself to the extent that you have, or completed the things that you've completed in life.
But I'll tell you, you've motivated me.
Definitely motivated me. But one thing I like to that I've maintained or retained, I guess you could say, from the military is integrity. And they say that they define that by doing the right thing when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
So I kind of it sounds like a psychological issue, but it's not that, I promise you. But it's like, I always picture it as if somebody is watching. Like, what would they say if somebody was watching me do this right now? So I apply that to everything that I do in life, whether it be work or the gym or my family, home life, whatever the case may be. It's always, I'm not doing the right thing because it's what's supposed to be done. I'm doing the right thing because if somebody were watching me, what would they do? What would you do? That kind of. So.
Well, we're getting ready to end out this podcast, but you just started a YouTube channel.
That's right.
And,
yeah.
Oh, really?
And so I would like to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel, and tell them, everybody, where we can find it and see more from you.
Well, it's actually it's a little more than just a YouTube channel. It's actually, I just started my own business. So
okay. Awesome.
Yeah, so my new business, actually wearing my shirt today. It's MS Mastery. And so my tagline is harnessing the incredible power of the brain, right there, to achieve life-changing results. Because it's essentially what I've been able to do, thanks to of course, the grace of God, but also just the discipline and the strategies that I've employed. But my new business is all about empowering other people to really maximize their potential. So if you're feeling stuck, or if you feel like that you just know that deep down inside that you have more in you, that you have more potential that you just either don't know, or you don't have the systems or the accountability to get you to that next level, that's where I come in. And I'm certified as a high performance coach. So I do coaching. I'm certified as a facilitator and trainer through John Maxwell. And then I'm also looking to get into public speaking, to sharing my story and inspiring people that way. So if you have anybody in your audience that is interested in, I offer free, like I call them strategy sessions, like free 30-minute sessions to see, how coaching may improve your performance in everyday life, and especially your mindset. The invitation is wide open. I'd love to, even if it's just a 30-minute just session to add value to you, I would love to do that. So
what would be the best way to get a hold of you in that case?
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of me is go to msmastery.com. And there's going to be a little video that pops up. You can just go ahead and book a 30-minute session right there. Super simple.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And
Excuse me.
I definitely hope this isn't the last time we
Oh, it
chat
won't
and we
be,
catch
yeah.
up. We'll definitely have to have you on again. And
It sounds
Yeah.
like you've got a lot more stories to tell than what
Oh,
we had time
yeah.
for today. So
Yeah,
we'll
we-
definitely have to have you on again.
we
for
could
more.
That's
we could
right.
sit here and talk to you all night
Oh,
long.
yeah.
But no, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and gracing us with your stories. And it's just been great catching up with you. And to anybody that's watching, if you have a fitness story, if you're a trainer and you would like to tell us, give us some helpful advice, or if you'd like to come on here and share your story, please contact us through the Fatman Project or the Fatman community page. And you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube, which our episodes air every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find us on TikTok. We're doing pretty good on TikTok right now, so
yeah.
we're happy about
We're
that.
growing.
But thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for being on the podcast. I'm Mitch Lunsford.
And I'm Dustin Carpenter, and you've been hanging out with us at the Fatmen Podcast.
Don't be a bitch.
Don't be a bitch.
Embrace the day.
Hell yeah.